Look what I got here.
Hey, where are the white women at?
Because it's funny as hell. That's why. Because we tried to watch Blazing Saddles a couple times and got shot down, even though we were doing very informative content with Blazing Saddles. But what's up, guys? So, like last Friday, I had to goof off a little bit before I got to go pick my daughter up. So, I thought I'd share and have a little bit of fun. Well, I don't know about fun. 500, Jason. Damn, everybody dropped in. What's going on, guys? So, yeah, Jason, you are definitely behind enemy lines. So we're going to look at some little behind enemy lines content and look at a little bit of our federal people. What's up, NC? So let's see. Let's do this. Where's it at? Here it is. So for our first little bit of fun, let's look at what our federal people were saying yesterday.
Either does not agree or just cannot deliver.
It'll be just a second. Hold on. Mitch McConnell, get out of the way. No one wants to hear you anyway. This was yesterday afternoon.
Mr. President.
The senator from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two important things I'd like to speak about today. And let me first start with a confirmation vote we will be having this afternoon on Judge Jonathan J.C. Gray to serve as the U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan. Both Senator Peters and I are strong supporters and thank President Biden for nominating him. And we look forward to colleagues joining us in a bipartisan vote, just as we had on the cloture vote, to make sure that he is confirmed today. Senator Peters and I were both honored to introduce him and his family during his hearing in the Judiciary Committee in November. And I know that his family is so very proud of him.
And this will be another leftist judge.
Gray is an outstanding choice to serve the people of Michigan because he's been doing just that. Judge Gray is currently serving as United States Magistrate Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan. As a magistrate judge, Judge Gray has presided over both civil and criminal cases. Before that, he served as an assistant United States attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan and the Southern District of Ohio, where he prosecuted criminal offenses. During the past 10 years, 95% of Judge Gray's practice has been in the federal courts.
I got a call. Let me mute myself.
Whether as a magistrate judge or an assistant U.S. attorney. He also worked as an associate at a law firm in Chicago, where he practiced labor and employment law and served as law clerk for 2 federal judges. Given his incredible breadth of experience, it's no surprise that the American Bar Association Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary unanimously found him to be well qualified for this position. Judge Gray was born in Mississippi and is a proud graduate of Morehouse College and the Georgetown University Law Center. And in the spirit of those 2 institutions, Judge Gray is a deep believer in giving back, both in Michigan and through his alma maters. I can think of no better place for Judge Gray to continue to serve the people of Michigan and our country than on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. And both Senator Peters and I urge our colleagues to vote yes to confirm Jonathan Gray this afternoon. Mr. President, as everyone knows, I'm an incredibly proud MSU Spartan. I earned both my undergraduate and my graduate degrees from Michigan State University. And I've been so proud to represent the university in the Michigan legislature, in the US House, and the United States Senate. I'm a Spartan, as is Senator Peters. And I'm horrified and heartbroken, and I'm angry because we're mourning 3 lives that were lost on February 13th when a gunman came to campus and randomly started shooting students. Ariel Anderson, Brian Fraser, Alexandria Verner were each full of hopes and dreams and so much promise. Ariel, age 19, graduated from Grosse Pointe North High School in 2021. She was known for her confidence, her kindness, and her incredible drive. She was studying to become a surgeon. Brian, age 20, graduated from Grosse Pointe South High School, where he competed on the swimming and diving teams. He was studying business, was president of Phi Delta Theta fraternity. And Alexandria, her friends.
Any chance they get to stand on a stack of bodies, they're going to do it.
20-year-old graduate of Clawson High School.
Never mind that their
She
laws are
excelled
the
in
cause for a lot of
volleyball,
this shit.
softball, and basketball. She was studying integrated biology and anthropology, and had
Wait a
hoped
minute.
to graduate next year. Ariel, Brian, and Alex had their whole lives ahead of them. And my heart aches for everyone
Polska, what's up, brother? Yeah, I'm there
who
with
is
you.
missing them today. We also know that gun violence isn't just about the lives that are ended. It's also about the lives that are forever, forever changed. At Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, Spartans are still fighting just to survive. Thousands more students and employees and community members have been left with scars you can't see, but they're there. They hurt as much and take as much time to heal as anything else. It's crucial that we ensure that everyone receive the mental health care that they need.
All emotional stuff. No
Last year, my
fixes for the
initiative to
issue.
bring high-quality mental health and addiction services to communities across the country was signed into law in the gun bill that we passed. And right now, it's helping to make a difference in meeting the needs in East Lansing, Mid-Michigan community. And I want to thank the Community Mental Health Authority of Clinton, Eaton, and Elam counties.
Yeah,
for
Warsaw, it's
working
just like
so
when they did
closely
all
with
that shit in
Michigan State
London, and then they
University
want
right
you to
now
bring in your kitchen knives
to
to get the
provide
tips blunted
support
because
for
there were so
everyone
many
who needs it.
stabbings.
So many different things are
It
happening
never
on
ends.
campus and across the community. Just one example, counselors from Community Mental Health have set up a place in the East Lansing Public Library where they're providing resources.
You take
and
all the
immediate
firearms off
free
this planet,
support
it's just
from
going to mean
therapists, and
that
people are
the
coming forward to
stronger
volunteer
person
their
with the
time
bigger club
to help
is
make this
going to
happen
be
as
the
well.
ruler.
They brought in support animals to comfort those.
And that little
in
person
pain.
with a little club,
Clinics like Community
make a
Mental
joke
Health don't
about
just
pepper
provide
size
help
there, but
after
I'm
a
not gonna.
crisis, though. This is about helping
Well,
people
they wouldn't
every
have
day,
any
helping
defense.
people in the first place, so that there's a place to call, and there is, and people in the community, family members concerned, people in neighborhoods that are seeing something that they're concerned about need to call and ask for help. But better mental health isn't enough. We also need to make it harder for people who harm others to get their hands on guns, because it's one thing if you are somebody who's unstable and have a knife. It's another thing if you have a gun. The consequences are very different depending on what you're holding in your hand. Firearms are now the leading cause of death for American children and
No,
teens.
they're not.
Think about that.
I love how they
Not
just
cancer, it's not cancer.
expand definitions and just blow
Guns.
past the facts of
We
anything.
can change that. We
They try to make it sound
must
like all these innocent kids are getting killed
change
by
that.
guns. What they don't tell
Michigan
you is a
legislature
lot
is
of these
taking
are little
action to strengthen our
gangbangers out
state's
there shooting
licensing
each other
process and background checks.
that you're not
require
going to
safe
stop with
storage,
background
and
checks.
pass a red flag law. What we did last summer was provide dollars to states to develop red flag laws. And I'm so proud of our governor and our new majorities in the state House and Senate for taking action now. I strongly support their efforts. I'm grateful as a citizen, as a mom, as a grandmother whose children are in the schools.
You take these people who are
are
committing the
taking
vast
these
majority of these
actions.
crimes. You could take the gun out of
On
this
the federal
equation.
level, last year I was
They are
proud
still
to
going to
support
commit these
the
same
Safer
violent crimes. They're
Communities
just
Act,
going to
which
use
is
other
an
means.
important step, but we need to do so much more.
Run people over with an SUV in the
We
middle
need
of
to
a
pass
parade.
a military assault weapons ban, legislation that I'm co-sponsoring.
No, that guy
While
who
we're
ran
at it,
his damn
let's
car
close the
through a
gun
parade
show
of people
loophole,
was
ensure that
in
all gun
in
sales in America
Wisconsin.
require
Killed
a
5
background
people.
check. It's just
The
common
one in France,
sense.
the dude drove a Ryder truck through a crowd of people and killed 84 people.
We owe it to Ariel, Ryan, and Alex, and the whole mental health community, to those who have been impacted across the country. These stories are way too common and should be absolutely unacceptable to everybody.
This chick works in a capital
President
that is
right now.
protected by people with
Pretty
guns and has
hollow,
fences all
Mr.
around it.
President,
Now,
as you know, as we've all spoken up.
hey, walls don't
It's
work.
pretty hollow when we are not willing to take the actions that can save lives. And
Waffles, man. I
that's
didn't see
the
you come
way
in. What's up, brother?
that we remember those that have been lost. One of the most important things, the most beautiful things about Michigan State and our entire Michigan community is how we came together to support one another. It's amazing. I've been incredibly touched by the stories of how people have helped one another, both on that tragic night and the days since. From the dispatchers and the first responders who immediately and calmly responded to a chaotic and dangerous scene, to the selfless staff at Sparrow Hospital giving comfort and life-saving care every day, to the East Lansing residents and everyone across Michigan who
She moved.
came together and put up yard signs to greet students as they returned to campus.
Under the couch, never see her again.
And yes, to the incredible support shown by our rivals.
I
An
won treason
enormous
that years
crowd
ago.
of
with police. I
University
don't
of
know how
Michigan
long
students
they
gathered in Ann Arbor on February 15th to show solidarity and support. At the same time,
Yeah,
Spartans
500.
were gathered at the Rock in East Lansing. A number of Wolverine sports teams.
If you take away
warm-ups honoring Michigan State,
this free fire zone
And
that
even
these
Ohio
mass
State.
shooters have, you're
Even
going to
Ohio
stop the
State.
mass shootings.
a great rival as well.
But see, these
Hired
people don't
an
want
airplane
to stop the
fly
mass
above
shootings.
Michigan State's
They could
campus
ban every
during the
assault
battle
weapon,
that
pick them
read,
all up,
"We are
and
with
then
you,
shootings will happen with handguns, and then they'll move to
Spartans strong,
handguns, and then
loud,
shootings will happen with a freaking
Ohio
bow and
State."
arrow, and they'll move to bow and arrows.
The MSU community and the community of East Lansing are so grateful. We are all so grateful for the outpouring of support. We'll get through this, but we shouldn't have to. But we will get through it. We just need to take action to stop this from happening again.
Are you hanging out?
We are all
Okay,
Spartan.
get these a mass shooter, whatever,
I yield the floor, Mr.
and all the
President.
laws they passed are aimed at law-abiding people. Makes a whole lot of sense to them.
President,
The senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, 15 months ago, I spoke here
This is
on the
another
Senate floor
complete
to
douche
commemorate the victims of a shooting at Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan. And Mr. President, just over 2 weeks ago, as a gunman opened fire at Michigan State University, our state lived through yet another nightmare. Another routine evening turned tragic. Another community was left scarred by unimaginable gun violence. And another 3 families will never see their children come home. Just after 8 p.m. on a crisp Monday evening,
Yeah,
gunfire
they act
erupted
like
at MSU's
these laws they
Hall.
pass are somehow going to
And
stop
as the
criminals
alerts
from doing
poured in,
things.
students all across campus
It
huddled
doesn't.
in fear.
In
Some
most cases,
blockaded their
laws are
dorm
purely
rooms
punitive.
and
They're
turned
not
off
there
the
to
lights.
stop someone from doing something. They
Others
penalize someone
grabbed
for
whatever
doing
objects
something.
were nearby and in case they needed to fight back. Parents called their children to check
And
in
if someone's
they were
going to go
safe
out
and
and intentionally
worried
murder
it
innocent
could be
people,
the
do you
last
think they
time
give a rat's ass
that they
about a
spoke.
gun-free zone or a
Those
punishment
near the
afterwards?
gunmen hid under tables and ran for
Most of
their
the time,
lives.
they plan on
One
dying
student
during
said
the
it sounded
event.
like a stampede as they tried to escape. In the end, 3 of their classmates did not make it. 3 students who had their entire lives ahead of them were stripped of their futures in an instant. Ariel Anderson, a 19-year-old from Harper Woods, was a sophomore. She enjoyed roller skating,
We need
photography,
to have Dad on and
and live
interview him about that
concerts.
time he was robbed.
A committed student, she was working to graduate early and embark on a career as a
That would be an
pediatrician.
interesting conversation.
She had a fierce intellect and a
My
deep
wife's sitting back
love
there shooting shit with her.
for her family, touching everyone in her life with a kind and gentle spirit. Alex Werner was 20 years old. She was a junior from Clawson and was studying to become a forensic scientist. She was a
Yeah,
gifted
500. We're going to
student
watch some
athlete
stuff
in
on
high school,
Washington here in a minute.
excelling in softball and basketball and volleyball, and a dedicated member of her community. Friends and
Ozzy,
peers
what's
described
happening,
her
brother?
as a leader and a giver, someone who was always smiling. And one of her peers remembered that she was, quote, the very best of us. Brian Frazier, the 20-year-old sophomore from Grosse Pointe, had an infectious
Yeah.
smile. and a
Washington, the
sense of
hearings,
humor that
I
could
listened to some
brighten
stuff today.
an
Washington, on
entire
one hand,
room.
is
As
looking
president of Phi
to
Delta Theta fraternity, he
aid
demonstrated a
more
commitment to
drug-addicted people,
service and
and on the other hand,
leadership.
looking to strip
He had
away
been
your
studying
Second Amendment
business and
rights.
economics when his life
Hands wet.
was cut short.
You might want to track him down and find out.
As a father and a fellow
Hold
Spartan,
that. Wait,
my
wait,
heart
let go,
breaks
let
for
go.
these gifted students, for their families,
Wife's handed me her
friends,
new
and the
sneak.
time that was stolen from them. My heart breaks
I
for
have to
those who
introduce this one in
survived,
a little bit.
who will carry the weight of this
G23, what's
horrific
up, brother?
memory for years to come.
We're gonna watch some stuff on
While this
some
scene
Washington
unfolded,
State gun control
First
in a minute.
responders and law enforcement officials bravely leaped into action. Dedicated doctors and nurses have worked around the clock to help the 5 students who were critically injured. And I'm grateful to these men and women for their tireless work.
Yeah,
At
Ozzy,
the
you're
same
right.
time, I know
I
that
need to
the
find some of the
students and
hearings from
staff at
Illinois and
MSU
start
and the
running some of those
broader
too.
East Lansing community will need time.
I'm trying
They
to
will need
find
time to
Tactical
heal
Flood.
in the
What's
wake
up?
of this
I'm
tragedy.
trying to find some of the
They shouldn't
hearings
have to do that
from
work alone.
Illinois.
We can honor them by taking
and
meaningful action, and
there's
we
another one I was
must
looking at the other day I
that
wanted to do.
now. Last
Can't
year,
remember
Congress
offhand.
showed that common sense reform is still possible with the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant legislation to address gun violence in nearly 3 decades. It invests in mental health resources, expands school safety measures, enhances background checks, and includes new guidelines to make sure we keep guns
It's all
from getting into
catchphrases.
the wrong hands. And while it's clear that this law did not go far enough, it has begun to make critical changes. We are already starting to see its benefits reach my state. Last week, Senator Stabenow and I welcomed $8 million in federal
I blame
funding
this
to
entirely
the
on you.
Michigan
What?
State Police.
You got into the
This
lubricant.
investment will help combat drug violence and enhance crisis intervention
Our room?
programs all
Yes,
across
I
the
had
state
it
of
locked
Michigan.
up.
Okay.
There's so much more that we can and we must do. We must pass legislation to expand federal background checks to all gun sales, a measure that I helped to reintroduce.
How are you going to enforce that?
Supported by the overwhelming majority of the American people.
No, it's
We can
not.
enact reasonable limits on high-capacity magazines and close dangerous muzzles.
High
We can
capacity
pass red flag
magazines.
laws while still respecting the rights of law-abiding, responsible gun owners.
You don't give a rat's ass about
And we
law-abiding
can
people.
invest in first responders like those who so bravely answered the call at Michigan State. The choice is ours to make.
Those who
We can
so
honor
bravely
these young
offered,
adults by
or,
making change, or
you
we
know,
can play
went to the
politics and
call
let
at
this
Michigan
cycle
State, and then
continue.
they didn't find the
But
dude
for Ariel,
until much
Alice,
later.
and Brian, and for the students and staff at Michigan State, and for every family that has been torn apart by gun violence, we must choose to act.
Chambered, what's up?
Madam President, I yield the floor.
All right, so that was yesterday. This was the Senate yesterday, United States Senate. Alerts on my phone. So we're going to roll back a little bit, though. January 17th, Washington State held their first hearing on this assault weapons ban. And I bounced to this because yesterday, Washington State held a hearing on firearms manufacturers and basically holding any firearms manufacturer liable for what people do with their products. Now, notwithstanding the fact that your average educated gun owner knows there are rules about gun safety. And if you follow those rules, there are 4 rules. If you follow those 4 rules, no innocent person is going to be harmed with a firearm. That is the intended use of a firearm. If you follow what a firearm does or what they are used for, no innocent person is going to be harmed by them. The entire bottle. I might mention that later. Get away! Get away! Go! Woman. Sorry, there might be a case of abuse here in a minute. You guys will see it. Call 911.
On my bed. It's all on my bed.
Oh, well.
And down the side of it. On the floor. The wall.
Good thing it's water-based.
And clear.
So anyway, but we're going to bounce back to January 17th when they held this assault weapons hearing, because they actually had some people come and testify against it. So that's why I want to bounce back to this one. So let's throw up another screen share.
And not flavored.
It was House Judiciary, this one. So let's let this roll. You guys make sure you can hear it.
Support for TVW Web Services provided by Virginia Mason
Give me a
Franciscan
5x5 on the sound.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the House Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. We have several bills on the agenda today, and at our last hearing, I forgot to read the hybrid committee meeting chair announcements. So I'm going to do that for those of you
Yeah, Barton Fink,
who
you ain't wrong.
only saw us during the pandemic. We are doing a mix of remote and in-person testimony. So if you listen for just a
Okay, so
moment,
that's
we have
up
been
all the
instructed
way. So
to
that's as
read
good as the sound's going to
this
get.
guidance for the committee. Welcome. A reminder that today's meeting is being recorded and is being streamed live on TVW. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some guidelines pertaining to our meeting. Some meeting participants are in the room, and some may be joining remotely in Zoom. Regardless of how you participate, you must be recognized by the chair before speaking. There are no remote members today, so I'm going to skip that part of the script. Participants in the room must use their microphone when speaking, so that it will broadcast into Zoom for any remote participants. The cameras in the room will switch to whoever is actively speaking. If there is noise coming from your microphone, you will display as the active speaker in the video stream. For this reason, you should only turn on your microphone when the chair calls upon you to speak. Please turn off your microphone again once you have finished speaking. As testifiers are called upon to provide testimony, the vice chair will also call the names of the persons on deck to testify. When the chair calls upon you to provide testimony, remote testifiers will be promoted to a panelist to give your testimony. Please click the Join as Panelist pop-up. During this time, your connection will indicate that you are rejoining the meeting, and you may experience a slight audio disruption for 2 to 3 seconds. After staff transition your Zoom connection, please turn on your audio and video. In-person testifiers should approach the testimony table.
Hey,
And all
Art Guns,
testifiers
what's
should
happening,
clearly
brother?
state their name and organization for the official record. Okay, so we obviously have a large number of people signed up to testify. We are going to start by limiting people to about 2 minutes apiece, and we'll see how long that works. And we'll get through as much public testimony as we can. The ranking member and I have talked about this. We've asked our members to keep their questions brief or ideally non-existent, so we can hear from as much of the public as we possibly
Yeah,
can.
Chamber,
So with
you're
that, we'll
right
open the
there.
public hearing on House Bill 1178 with a staff briefing. Mr. Sterling.
Good morning, Chair Hansen and committee members. For the record, my name is Matt Sterling, staff to the committee. House Bill 1178 concerns the state preemption of local jurisdictions from adopting laws relating to firearms. As background, under the state constitution, local jurisdictions have the authority to adopt and enforce public health, safety, and other laws unless in conflict with the general laws of the state. The statutes governing firearms contain a preemption section that expresses an intent to limit the authority of local jurisdictions to pass firearm laws. The law provides that the state fully occupies and preempts the entire field of firearms regulation in the state, and local jurisdictions only may enact laws relating to firearms that are specifically authorized by and consistent with state law. Local jurisdictions are specifically authorized to regulate the discharge of firearms in locations where there is reasonable likelihood that humans, domestic animals, or property will be jeopardized, or in any stadium or convention center operated by local
500.
jurisdiction. However,
Yep.
these restrictions may not
That's all you
apply
can say about
to a
that.
pistol in the possession of a person who has a valid concealed pistol license or is exempt from CPL requirements, or any showing, demonstration, or lecture involving the exhibition of firearms. Local jurisdictions may also regulate the areas in which firearms may be sold, as long as businesses selling firearms are not treated more restrictively than other businesses located within the same zone. And a local jurisdiction may restrict the location of a firearms business to not less than 500 feet from any school grounds if the business has a storefront with business hours and posts advertisements that firearms are for sale. House Bill 1178 before the committee repeals the statute that preempts local governments from adopting laws relating to firearms and adds a new section stating that nothing in the chapter of law governing firearms affects, modifies, or limits the authority of cities, municipalities, or counties to adopt ordinances or regulations that are in addition to or more restrictive than state laws governing firearms. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Okay, we have a prime sponsor. Representative Hackney, would you care to tell us about your bill?
G23, that's cool as hell, man.
Chair Hansen, Ranking Member Walsh, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of HB 1178, which repeals the statute which preempts local jurisdictions from enacting laws regarding firearms. And the reason for this is simple. One size fits all doesn't necessarily work. And local jurisdictions should have the authority to adopt the kind of gun regulations that are appropriate for their community.
So you turn everything into a
in South King
minefield.
County, where the 11th district, where it exists, we are facing a surge of gun violence. In fact, we experience 70% of all the gun violence in King County. It should be appropriate for those communities to make decisions for themselves on the kind of gun regulations that make sense for them.
That's
And we shouldn't
absolutely
have to then
retarded
impose
because your
that
regulations
on other
are
areas
just
of the
going
state
to
that are not
affect
facing a surge of
law-abiding
gun
people.
violence.
You
So
jackass.
the preemption by the state of gun laws actually
Chris,
causes
what's
harm
happening,
to
brother?
communities that don't have the ability to adopt the kind of laws that make sense for them. So I urge that you pass this bill through with a do pass recommendation.
Thank you. That's exemplary brief testimony, which we appreciate. Representative Root has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very brief question, too. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on potential difficulties of a a firearm owner, and creating kind of a patchwork of laws around the state, and if that might create any concern about compliance difficulties.
Thank you for that question. I believe that if you take the responsibility of
Chamber,
having a
you're right.
firearm, then you should take
That's
also the
why,
additional
as a
responsibility
proportion of
understanding
society,
the local
most of your
laws.
negligent,
And again, although there may be some
discharges
inconvenience
happen
by
with
not
law
being able to
enforcement,
carry your
not
firearm
citizens.
or in the same manner in every jurisdiction, I think the need for local jurisdictions to adopt firearm laws that are applicable to the circumstances they're facing outweighs that concern.
The ranking member has promised a brief follow-up.
Welcome, Rep. Hackney. It's always good to talk to you. The concept behind the existing statute on these matters is that gun rights are not like other rights. They're foundational and essential, and that it's important for policy to be consistent across the state. If this bill passes, is there a risk that local jurisdictions will want to extend this concept to more strict restrictions and local policies on other foundational rights?
The
like
answer to that is yes.
Right to peaceably assemble for the common good and the right to not be disturbed in your personal affairs. Do you see that it could drift that direction?
I don't see it as a slippery slope, but I do see the Constitution is not a suicide pact. It's a balancing act. We constantly have to balance the rights of people that are enforcing their constitutional protections against the others. And so even with the Second Amendment is broad enough to allow for reasonable gun regulations, particularly to protect communities that are under a siege of gun violence and crime.
You know who's committing the violence.
Hearing none, thank you, Representative Hackney.
Focus
for your time,
on
we'll begin
them.
with public testimony. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are going to start with a remote panel of Brianne Beggs, Ashley Brooks, Craig Reynolds, and Monisha Harrell. And then we'll have on deck an in-person panel.
Not necessarily a balancing
here
act.
on the, what is my right side of the room, the front three chairs.
The Constitution
we'll have,
lays out
Evine Klein,
protections
Dave Workman, and Brian
for
Kuhn.
rights. Those rights.
Yes, so if you are not
God-given
in the room
rights
yet, you can make your
given
way
by
from the overflow room
Creator,
up here, and we have three
and
chairs
then
at the front, and you
lays
can make
out
yourselves
what
at
the
home.
government can't
I'm not
do
quite sure what the papers
to
are on
those
the
rights.
chairs, but you are entitled to sit there.
And
So
shall
fear
not be
Thank you.
infringed has
With that,
always
let's
meant
hear from,
shall
let's go
not
in
be
order that we
infringed.
were called. Brian Beggs, when you're ready.
It didn't say whatever we
Yes,
deem safe.
Sure, my
We can hear you just fine.
I'm there.
There we are.
Sorry about that.
Now we see.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hansen and Ranking Member Walsh and members. Brian Beggs, I'm the Spokane City Council President. We like to remind people that we're the second biggest city in Washington. Of course, we're in Eastern Washington. I stand strongly in support of this bill. One thing I just want to note is that we are all bound by the Second Amendment and the Washington Constitution and any minimum safety standards.
This is a case of
that the
sheep being
legislature
attacked by
imposes,
wolves, and
with the
you pull
unique
the
situation
sheep's
of
fucking
firearms.
teeth.
But like Representative
Makes
Hackney,
sense.
I strongly believe that each community knows what's best for it, what works best, what's most effective, what they need, and decisions are best made closest to the people that they're impacting. So as long as we meet those minimum requirements, it will really help us. Right now, we feel really hamstrung. We also, in COVID, have had a vast increase in gun violence, and our police don't really know much what to do about it. And we have
Arrest
ideas
the
over
people
the
committing
years
the
of what to do,
crimes.
but our city legal department
Be
says
that
we
simple.
cannot do anything unless we can convince the legislature to do it. Would give us the flexibility that we need and the confidence in our people that we, the people,
Arrest them,
decide public
prosecute
safety
them,
and health
and don't let
welfare
them out
as
of fucking
long
jail.
as we maintain those minimum constitutional rights. I've spent much of my legal career as a civil rights lawyer and protecting victims of violence. And even Justice Scalia and Heller and then the Bruin decision all set out that there are reasonable restrictions
why I've
that
said
keep people
Heller
safe
was a
and preserve our
punt.
well-regulated
Heller
militia.
was not.
The last thing I just want to mention is we have had problems like many places where local officials have to suffer through this as well. I myself had
I'd
to
like to
watch my
tighten
twin
this Joker's
daughters
necktie for him.
watch armed people in our front yard over the issue of water quality of all things. So I urge you to return our power and control of the people of Spokane within the minimum rights and pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you
Minimum
for coming in
rights.
right at 2 minutes. Representative Graham has a question, please.
Thank you, Chair. The question that I have is, obviously I hail from Spokane as well and have connections with law enforcement there. I noticed that you mentioned that the police officers don't really have an idea for what to do. And I'm finding myself a little bit at a quandary with that because that's not the conversation they're having with me as a state rep. I'm curious, what are you willing to support as far as the people that are committing the crimes actually being held accountable?
Yeah, Chamber. I've seen a bunch of videos very similar to that over an expired license
repeatedly
plate.
that seems to keep falling on deaf ears.
Broken tail light.
Yeah, I can just tell you personally, I have spent my legal career holding people accountable for the gun violence acts that they commit against people and really supporting survivors on it. So we should fully enforce our criminal laws and do that. But the challenge has been guns have been getting into the hands of people that shouldn't have them. And so what can we do to protect our community from people who are just a little negligent on it? They don't quite understand the dangers of it. They don't keep their firearms safely secure. So I'm all for enforcing all the current laws.
Funny how that works.
Just,
An
I
armed
would like as a
civilian
city
actually saving
that
a
we could
life.
choose additional options to keep
Because
our
according to
community
these
members
people,
safe.
shit like that never happens.
Let's hear from
We
Councilmember
all
Brooks,
carry
please.
guns because we're evil people.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Ashley Lee Brooks. I live in Yelm, Washington. I am a leader with the Washington chapter of Moms Demand Action, a graduate of the National Parent Leadership Training Institute, and as you said, a Yelm City Councilor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of
if that
this
doesn't
bill.
fit a Moms Demand
I
Action
look
member.
to the Thurston County Sheriff's Office and the City of Yelm Police to keep me and my family safe.
Well, that's your
I
first
extend our
problem,
gratitude
dumbass.
to all of the officers who work to help ensure that the gun responsibility laws we pass are working as promised to keep our community safe. But currently, local leaders are not empowered to make decisions about firearms that are appropriate for their constituents. This bill would change that.
How are you going to decide
That
what
what
is
makes an
proper
open and welcoming environment
for your
might be different
constituents?
depending on where you are. Giving local governments this decision-making power is an important part of addressing the threat firearms pose to our communities. This bill takes a long overdue step towards giving local leaders the ability to tailor the approach to reducing crime and protecting life and property. I urge you to support it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Councilmember Reynolds, please.
Good morning. My name is Craig Reynolds. I'm a member of the City Council of the City of Mercer Island, though I'm speaking here today on my own behalf and not on behalf of the City of Mercer Island or the Mercer Island City Council. I'd like to begin by thanking you for your service to the state of Washington. As a City Council member, I have some understanding of the sacrifices you make on behalf of the residents of our state. Besides being a City Council member, like many of you, I have a day job. I've worked as an actuary for more than 37 years. My responsibilities include understanding and forecasting mortality rates on behalf of life insurance companies. I'm a published author on the topic of firearm risk and insurance. In part because of my work, I know that around 1% of deaths in the US each year result from firearms. This may not seem like many in the abstract until one considers that firearms are the leading cause of death for children in this country.
No, they're not.
Around
You
60%
fuck
of
nuts.
firearm deaths are suicide. Appropriate firearm regulation could have saved many of these lives. I lost my best friend to an accidental gunshot wound when I was in high school. This was a pointless and avoidable tragedy, and I rarely go a day without remembering.
Could have been solved by
And if I
just
could,
training
I'd
your
change the world
child
to
with
ensure
a
that no one
firearm.
else has to go through what he, his family, or all of his friends went through. Your duties are many, but none are more important than your responsibility to protect the health and safety of the residents of this state. I feel the same responsibility for the residents of Mercer Island that I represent. Unfortunately, the preemption provision codified in RCW 941-290 prevents the City of Mercer Island from enacting firearm-related legislation, thus limiting my ability to vote for city code that could help ensure the safety of my constituents even if such code is supported by my community. HB 1178 will appropriately extend the power to regulate firearms to local governments that are best equipped to understand the needs and interests of their residents. I hope you'll support it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for working to ensure the safety of my family and the other residents of Washington.
That's what I said earlier, Chamber.
Great, thank you. Let's
These
hear from
laws
Deputy Mayor
don't
Monisha
stop a
Harrell,
crime.
please.
They're punitive if someone
Deputy
takes
Mayor,
that
I think.
action.
Hi
So
there.
what you're
Thank
going to
you.
do is
My
just
name is
make
Monisha Harrell.
law-abiding
I'm the Senior Deputy
people
Mayor for
either
the City of Seattle,
disarm
and I'm
or
testifying
force
today in
them to
support
break
of
a
House
law to
Bill
defend themselves.
1178. Washington State is a beautifully diverse state. Its gun regulation should respect that diversity. Seattle's gun regulation needs will naturally be different than Republic's. Bellingham's will naturally be different than Carroll's. This bill
So you're telling
allows
me
the
human
restoration
nature
of local
changes
authority
in
to our
each
cities
jurisdiction.
for gun violence and gun regulations, because that's exactly where it should be. Universally, state laws are traditionally the floor, not the ceiling. And in this particular case and in this particular topic, we've made it the ceiling, which is hard when you have cities as diverse as the ones that I have mentioned. We want the restoration of local authority for gun regulations, because we can then address this epidemic of gun violence that is hitting many of
You
our
have
major
every
urban areas
tool
in
in your
particular,
toy box
but really
right
all
now.
over the state.
I said toy box for a
This
reason.
allows each of the local
To
leaders to better
address gun
understand their
violence, you
constituents
take
and be better
violent people,
responsive to
you
their
arrest them, you
constituents,
charge
which is
them,
all they
and
ever
then you
ask from
put their
us,
asses in
is
prison
to meet the
and you
needs of the
keep them
jurisdiction
there.
that they are living in. This bill, House Bill 1178, allows us to do just that. So I ask all of you, if it is appropriate, for us to truly create a ceiling on this as opposed to a floor, and restore the local authority of each local jurisdiction to be able to regulate as they best see fit and as they can be responsive to their constituents. Thank you so much for your time. And,
Yeah,
I know
MC,
you
yeah,
have a
those
great
are
session
laws you
ahead.
really can't
Okay, thank you,
break
Senior
too
Deputy
much.
Mayor. Thank you for joining us.
Bend them a little
Thank you
bit.
all remote testifiers for joining us. We will now go to the in-person panel. So let's have Aveen Klein, Dave Workman, and Brian Keelan come up. And then
There
the
are
Vice Chair
very
will
few
call
cases in the history of the world where
on-deck
someone
panel,
has
the
taken
next
a
one to come.
firearm and killed
Thank you,
another
Mr. Chair.
person,
On deck
another
in
innocent
person
person,
is going to be
and they didn't
Liz
know that that was
Helmseth,
wrong.
Karen Brownson, and Neil Black. And then again on the right in the front three
If
chairs.
someone is going to go through the process of
So if you're
shooting
in the overflow,
multiple
please
unarmed
make your
people,
way up here
they
while
don't
this
give a
panel is
rat's
testifying,
ass
and
what
current
law you
panel, you may
pass.
go in whatever order you wish.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hansen, honorable members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aveen Klein, State Director for the NRA. Firearm preemption laws are among the most simple in concept, but often the most difficult to understand. To illustrate the issue of preemption, assume you were traveling along the I-5 corridor from Clark County on the Oregon border north here to Olympia. You will travel through 4 different counties and at least 10 different cities along that same corridor.
Let me put this in a very simple concept to me. Okay, I live right near Fort Benning. 185 runs right into Fort Benning. It is illegal to conceal and carry on Fort Benning. It's illegal to open carry on Fort Benning. If something happens and I got jammed up in traffic and I could not get over to get the last exit, I would be traveling onto federal property with a firearm, loaded, concealed, and if I got pulled over trying to make a goddamn U-turn, they could prosecute me for that. The same thing happens in some cities where there was one lady who ended up, she was in, I think, New Jersey and crossed into New York, went to make a U-turn, got pulled over. Cop arrests her. You have a gun? Well, that's a crime, lady. We're going to send your ass to fucking prison. That's how these preemption laws would work. I'm driving from point A to point B in Washington. I pass through 3 different jurisdictions. One jurisdiction says it's okay. I'm on the interstate. I get pulled over in the wrong jurisdiction. Guess what? My fat ass gets locked up. This is so goddamn ridiculous that I can't even fit the thought into my head. Okay, back to this.
So in 100 miles, an hour and a half, you have to travel through a minimum of 14 different jurisdictions.
Thank you, Chamber.
Under
Yeah, you perps hit the like
current
button.
preemption statute,
Even if you don't like
the
me.
laws that apply to how you register, license, possess, purchase, sell, transfer, and store your firearm are uniform. If House Bill 1178 passes, in that stretch of just 100 miles, you will encounter 14 different jurisdictions with patchwork laws and regulations. In one county, your firearm can be concealed. In the next, it must be locked and unloaded in the trunk during transit. In the next, completely banned. We've seen the emboldened communities here in Washington try to circumvent state authority on firearm regulation already. Be careful. Cross an inevitable and invisible geographical boundary. You're law-abiding on one side and a felon on the other. House Bill 1178 seeks to make it impossible for Washingtonians to comply. It seeks to end lawful carry and ownership through a patchwork of confusing and inconsistent laws. Banning lawful guns will only leave criminals. For these reasons, I urge you to reject House Bill 1178.
Great, thank you. Whoever wishes to go next.
Thank you, committee chair, committee members for taking my comments. My name is Brian Keelan. I'm a retired person living here in Olympia. I am representing the Washington State Rifle and Pistol Association and the Tacoma Rifle and Revolver
Chamber,
Club
I
of University
think
Place.
she ended up
Our
fighting
membership
that,
urges
and
you to
I
oppose House Bill
believe
1178
she ended
for
up
the
not
following
going to
reasons.
prison.
This bill
A
will create
couple
a patchwork
organizations,
of
I think,
laws
stepped up and
that
helped
will
her
make
out.
it all
But
but impossible for an honest
you know,
citizen to attend
still,
competitive shooting, target
thousands
shooting,
and thousands
hunting
of dollars
purposes.
were spent to defend herself
This
because
bill would force its
she
members
crossed
into
a bridge.
breaking laws just by driving from one location to the other. And this bill has been written without any input from the sport shooting or hunting community. This bill will do nothing to promote gun safety, and no one on this committee has offered any reliable information to suggest that this is the case. Having a small town or county create laws that all members of the state have to comply with just to suit that town's ideas of what is good or right somehow seems like an introduction to abuse of power. And it
You
seems like
think?
the start of economic racism. Now, speaking as a private citizen, I must comment on the intent of House Bill 1178. It seems that stripping some citizens of state protections under our Constitution is what this bill is after. For an example, an affluent community could set very high standards for firearm ownerships, and its lower income citizens could not afford to comply with those standards, such as time off from work to attend training or paying for training and so forth.
Yes, sir.
The net result would be that lower income citizens would not be allowed to use firearms as sporting tools or for self-defense.
Dude's exactly right.
This is just what the southern states did when they enacted Jim Crow laws of the late 1800s.
Yep.
They prevented people of color from voting or owning guns because of a lack of education and income requirements.
So I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're out of 2 minutes. If you could wind up real quick, that'd be great.
Thank you. Bill 1178 is at its heart a racist attempt to keep people of low income and means from sport shooting, hunting, and self-defense. I urge you to oppose House Bill 1178 as a modern form of Jim Crow 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Very
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Dave Workman. I wrote a book called Washington State Gun Rights and Responsibilities a few years ago. I'm a journalist. Guns are my beat, and I'm also the communications director for the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. I have seen 40 years, or almost 40 years of state preemption, and it works. Washington State's law actually served as a model for several other states that adopted their own preemption. Right now, I think there are 40, maybe 40 plus states that have adopted preemption, and the idea works. It's a good concept. You have uniformity from one border to the other. Nobody needs to question what the laws are as they travel through the state. Whether you're in Owaco or the little town of Ione or Pullman or Port Angeles, it's all the same. You know what you can do and you know what you can't.
Yeah,
I can't think of
threaten people with my gun.
good
I can't murder
reason why
people with
the
my gun. It's really
legislature
simple.
would give up its authority over state firearms regulation. I can think of about 700,000 reasons why you shouldn't. That's the number of active concealed pistol license in this state. And the number continues to climb. I think the intentions probably are maybe good, but that's what the road to hell is paved with. So I encourage you to reject
sir.
this idea. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. We will now hear from Councilmember Helmseth, Karen Brownson, and Neil Black, and the Vice Chair will call the on-deck panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On deck in our remote zone, we're going to have Jennifer Belmore Tamiz, Sheriff John Knowles, and Aaron Lee.
All right, in-person people, you may go in whatever order you wish.
Hello, my name is Liz Jelmseth. I'm from the 40th District. I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 1178, which will empower local leadership to keep their communities safe. I've been coming to hearings here for many years, and every time there's a new measure, I hear the same thing, a dire warning from the opposition that any law for gun safety would turn an innocent,
They're not gun
law-abiding
safety
gun
laws,
owner
lady. They're
into a
gun
criminal.
control laws.
As a gun owner, that warning has concerned me, and so I pay attention and I watch, and thankfully those warnings have not come to pass. Innocence has not been turned into criminality. As a gun violence survivor, though, I'd like to talk to you about a different kind of loss of innocence. When I was 8 years old, my brother shot me. On that day,
I've
he
heard her
and I
testify
both lost
somewhere
our
else.
innocence. It radiated out into our community, and it changed everyone. It took a piece of their innocence away as well. We know in our communities, in certain communities in our state, that loss of innocence is becoming epidemic. I know as legislators, you have a very
There's a
hard job.
serious
You have to
lack of
balance
common sense
which innocence to protect.
and an even worse lack of respect for
What
life.
works for Tenasket might not work for Bellingham, though. And that's why I'm here today. To ask you to who better to know community needs than the people that belong and live in that community. Who better to protect the innocents?
You know, we live in a republic so that no one else can dictate my rights.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Karen Brownson, and I'm on the Violence Prevention Team at Public Health Seattle and King County, and a resident of District 34, firearm injury prevention. Since 1994, local and municipal governments in Washington have been bound by state preemption from creating locally appropriate policies regulating firearms. This restriction has limited local governments' authority to make laws.
So yeah, you all black folks, y'all's asses don't need no guns.
That meet among urban and rural Washington, when our communication and collaboration among nearby municipal governments is common. And the Puget Sound partnerships and King County's regional approach to gun violence team partners with leaders across the region on firearm violence prevention. The infrastructures local governments have neighbors. Will mitigate the implementation challenge as some other tests.
All right. Hopefully I'm back. All right, am I back? Hopefully I'm back. Jesus Christ. Either the internet company doesn't like me or something. All right, let's
traffic, public health, and building design.
Okay, I think
We
back.
design safe roads, crosswalks, and intersections, and restrict certain businesses from locating near schools. We administer the criminal courts. We operate the jails and supervise local fire and police. We're the first level of government that the public turns to for safety. And we maintain much of the public safety infrastructure. Yet when it comes to protecting our communities from gun
we're back.
violence,
We're running.
our hands are tied. Gun violence prevention can and should occur at every level of government. And Kirkland residents ask their
That was a
leaders
bit
to
of a
do
hiccup.
more. As city leaders, we should have the power to enact policies that will reduce gun violence and save lives. Granting local governments that authority does not allow us to offer less protection than that offered by the state, nor act beyond what is prescribed by the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. As you've heard today, from east to west, small to large, local governments are here to ask, on behalf of our communities, that gun violence prevention once again be included in our myriad efforts to keep our residents safe. Again, thank you for hearing House Bill 1178, and thank you for this opportunity to express local government support.
Thank you very much.
Tara
Your
Smith, what's
excuse, let's
up?
hear from our remote panel. We have Jennifer Belmore to me, Sheriff John Knowles, and Aaron
All this
Lee.
is
And why
just
don't we start
another
with you,
reminder
Jennifer,
that
since
we
you were the
have
first name I
a
called when you're ready.
federal attack or a national
Hi
level
there,
attack
my name
on our
is
rights.
Jennifer Belmore
we also have
Tenez.
the
I've
state
been a
levels.
Washington resident my entire life and have been a Washington and Oregon licensed realtor for over 16 years. Daily, my business activities of showing and selling real estate can take me about a 100-mile radius from my residence in Battleground, Washington. I travel to several different counties and cities daily. I may start my day in Battleground, but end up driving to Chehalis and back into Woodland. I don't have a set schedule, and I must be able to help my clients as their needs change. I acquired a concealed carry license several years ago, as this job does take me to remote locations without cell
You got
service,
sketty on your face.
to
boy.
vacant homes where I have potential encounter of squatters and trespassers. In 2012 and 2013, I had two separate incidents with individuals
You
who
got sketty on
trespassed
your
onto
face.
properties I was scheduled to show my clients. One in downtown Vancouver and one in La Center. In both instances, I was able to divert my clients
Say hi,
to
sketty
another
face.
safe location and connect with law enforcement for additional assistance. In 2016, I had a listing that was overtaken and squatted in on two separate occasions. It led to property damage and a reduced sales price to the seller,
Yeah, you can't
as
have
well
my
as
headphones.
endangerment for myself. Requiring additional licensing for each jurisdiction I travel to is not only burdensome and overly complex, but unnecessary given Washington State's laws that already exist. It would involve an
Boy, you
additional
wrapped all
4
up in this
counties and 30 cities of jurisdictions, all of which could have different rules
Say
and
hi.
regulations than what the
Say what
state
up,
law
Perps.
provides. Not to mention the cost of incurring and
Say
achieving
what up, Perps.
compliance in 34 additional areas.
You're not
While
gonna say
cities
it?
could have their own permit, my bigger concern is
Say
I
what
would
up,
be
Perps.
carrying my weapon in Woodland. But in Vancouver, those rules would be different and I would need to keep it
Go watch
locked
that
in my
walk.
trunk.
Go.
Again, not accessible for me. On one side of the street in Clark County, it is one thing. On another side in Camas, it is another. Please do not pass,
Oop, wrong
and
one.
thank you for your consideration.
Great, thank you very much. Sheriff Knowles, please.
Let's do this one.
Chairman Johnson and Ranking Member Walsh, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I am here to speak to you and ask you to reject House Bill 1178. As has been stated
But I
by
thought all the
several people
police
offering
wanted this.
testimony today, the
What
stated
up, Clint
purpose
Eastwood,
of
brother?
repealing the preemption law
Brother DM,
is
what's
to
happening?
increase public safety and give more local control. However, while I would normally support local control in most areas where public safety is concerned, firearm laws need to be uniform across the state of Washington for a myriad of reasons. First off, as a private citizen, as I commute to work every day, I cross at least 4 other boundaries of municipalities on my way into the city center of Spokane on my way into work. As a private citizen, I would have to know each individual firearm laws as they pertain to those individual jurisdictions as I went to work if this law is enacted. I will say that that is an unreasonable expectation of most citizens, and that's just on my daily commute to work, let alone what kind of travel I might take throughout this state. The preemption law here in Washington state is a model for at least 20 other states throughout the United States because it is so effective and works so well. By repealing this law, it will create criminals out of otherwise law-abiding, tax-paying citizens who are just exercising their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. I ask you to reject House Bill 1178 and not create criminals out of our good citizens. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Aaron Lee, please.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Lee. I'm from the 44th District. I am a bisexual male for part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Thanks for
and
sharing.
I'm here today to
No one
urge
gives a
you
shit.
not to vote yes on 78, as it will create a great deal of patchwork laws. But on top of that, it forces people like myself, a concealed pistol license holder, when I say I wish to go support various LGBTQ plus events, to ask the question, where am I going? How many laws am I going to have to look up? And am I going to become a criminal simply by traveling to those events? Thus, I become stuck with the quandary of, do I go there and hope I haven't broken laws? Do I spend endless hours trying to figure out if I am or not? Or do I spend my time just going unarmed, especially with recent events that have shown that my community is very much under attack? We have seen several cases of my community being targeted.
Yes,
in
and it
various
would be
states.
much easier to defend yourself
Unfortunately,
if you
that
had the
reality
tools to do
continues to
so.
exist
Thank
despite
you,
the best
sir,
efforts
for
of
acknowledging
many
that.
people. Because of that, I don't believe that this will do us any good in making our communities safer, and certainly will not make me feel as though we're getting any safer. Instead, I fear it will turn into what we saw in Colorado, where a guy who could not get the gun he wanted in his current city simply went to another city to go get it, and then came back and turned it on innocent people. This, and with the knowledge that my community is being targeted, as are many minority communities, this tends to punish us rather than the people who would do harm.
Yeah,
Thank you
no one
for the
cares
chance to
about your
speak, and
sexuality, dude.
thank you very much for the time.
Should have been real
Great, thank you
simple.
very
Hey,
much. Okay,
I
that will
want to
conclude
defend
the public
myself.
testimony
You
for the
guys are
public
trying
hearing
to
on House
stop
Bill
me from doing
1178. We should let everyone know, as we said this at the beginning, you should feel free to submit written testimony to the committee, which is an option available because obviously we do not have time to hear from everyone, but thank you for taking the time to testify. So let's open the public hearing on House Bill 1240 with a staff briefing from Mr. Brzezinski.
Good morning, Chair, Representatives. For the record, I'm John Brzezinski, staff to the committee. House Bill 1240 concerns the regulation of certain assault weapons. By way of background, Washington generally prohibits the manufacture and possession of certain firearms and equipment, such as machine guns, bump fire stocks, undetectable.
So let's hit this point real quick. Let me make myself bigger. So here's the main argument in between two positions here, if you just want to boil things down. I don't understand the argument that people are a threat to me or could possibly be a threat to me, so I need more government protection. When government's not right there with you all the time, you have to call them and give them a reason for them to show up. I don't understand that. Jewish people, gay people, whatever. I don't understand that, because the criminals who are obviously threats to you don't care about the laws. Why not arm yourself and get some training so that if a threat is presented to you, you have the ability to react to that threat right then and there, and then call the police, because they've got to get in their cars and drive their happy ass to wherever you're at. I can't pull a cop out of my back pocket. I can pull a gun from a holster. And yeah, if I'm shot right at the start of it, okay, had that one coming. but hopefully someone else is there who, while that dumbass is shooting me, they can engage that person and then stop them from murdering multiple other people. And we've seen that with people carrying, whether it's in a Texas Okay. Hopefully I'm back again. Anyway, back to that thought, since hopefully I'm back. I don't see the mindset behind we need to just strip away guns and the government needs to protect us further. I don't know whether you guys heard it, whether it froze before. I can't carry a cop in my pocket. I can carry a gun. Hopefully, if that shooter engages me, if I don't engage them first, someone else is there to engage them and stop them from killing more innocent people.
Firearms and short-barreled shotguns and rifles. Additionally, the state restricts access to semi-automatic assault rifles. House Bill 1240 prohibits the manufacture, importation, distribution, sale, or offer for sale of any assault weapon. The term assault weapon is defined in detail in the bill, but in general, it includes certain semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns with specified dimensions, capacities, and features listed in the bill, specific firearm models listed in the bill, and conversion kits and parts. The bill contains limited exceptions for licensed manufacturers and dealers for the purpose of sale to the armed forces and law enforcement, and sale or transfer, transfer to persons not residing in Washington. Additionally, the bill contains an exception for inheritance of an assault weapon upon the death of a former owner who legally possessed the weapon. A violation of the bill's restrictions constitutes a gross misdemeanor and is actionable under the Consumer Protection Act. That concludes my remarks. Happy to address any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Our own Representative Peterson is the prime sponsor. Tell us about your bill.
Good day.
Anyway. And thank you, Chair Hansen and Vice Chair Farvar and Ranking Member Walsh, members of the committee. For the record, Strom Peterson representing the 21st District. To me, this bill is...
You and me both, AR. My internet keeps cutting out.
What it boils down to, for me, is this bill is about a very long list of names. A long list of names that I won't read to you because it goes back 4 decades, but some of the incidences where these names are listed would be Sandy Hook Elementary School. Of course, most recently, Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York, but also right here in my community in Mukilteo, Washington, where 8 years ago, just almost 8 years ago, a young man legally purchased an AR-15, shot up a house party, killing Anna, Jake, and Jordan, injuring Will. The only reason there isn't a longer list of names from Mukilteo is because the young man who purchased the weapon didn't really know how to use it, and the gun jammed, and then he fled the scene. These tragedies are happening across the country every week. We can open up a new unfortunately, sometimes it's not in the headline. Sometimes that story might be on page 2 or page 3, because we seem to be becoming numb.
Don't drop them.
The scourge of violence that is happening with these assault weapons. Yes, there are other guns that create death and tragedy in communities, and certainly even other weapons that do the same. But the percentage of mass shootings that are used by these weapons of war is something that we here in the state of Washington can do something about. And I think this
Dude, you're more than likely to get hit by lightning 3 times in one day than you are to get shot by an assault weapon.
Just limit the continuing purchase and expansion of the use of these weapons in our state. So I thank you again for hearing this bill. I thank, of course, the governor and the attorney general, but most of all, I thank the young people from around this country that have made this their passion of the work that they know.
Yeah, AR, you're 100% right, man.
Representatives. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. The ranking member has a question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Peterson. We've heard mention already in testimony on a previous bill here today that mention of the Bruen decision, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, and that decision described legislation, proposals like this, and if passed into law, state laws like this, that rely on what legal scholars consider a two-step analysis or two-part justification for the policy. And the Bruen decision, the U.S. Supreme Court said that two-part balancing test has one part too many and has turned away analogous laws like this. How do you think this proposal squares with that Bruen decision?
Certainly not a constitutional attorney nor an attorney at all.
I'm not an attorney, and I can tell you where it
I believe
stands.
in the legal minds that helped craft this in the Attorney General's office. I believe it's on sound constitutional footing. I think other similar laws across the country have been upheld in courts, and I think that
No, AR, I'm not abiding by any of their bans. If they do this shit federal,
I welcome that.
they can eat one.
And I think that is one of the things that we get to do in state government is, we are the petri dish of discovering these laws.
Oh, you're a
and this is,
petri dish.
I think an honest attempt to see if we can, in fact, stem the
Not like a staph infection.
stem the tide of gun violence.
Great, thank you. Representative Graham has a question, please.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. So listening intently to what you were talking about, you were mentioning the schools, you were mentioning the shootings that have happened. I think part of what we haven't talked about much is the young people that want the attention. They're doing this for attention. So I'm asking, are you supportive of other legislation that would
Back again. Let's get back to it.
Legislation that's been before this body is complicated, and we do have to look at the backgrounds of individuals as they are sentenced and as they do commit these crimes.
Great, thank you. That sounds like a matter for Chair Goodman's committee. Okay, so with that, thank you, Mr. Prime Sponsor. You'll be excused, and we will begin public testimony. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will start with in-person testimony from Anne Marie Parsons, Robert Schentrup, Barbara Serrano, Kristen Beneski. And then for on deck, we will go to a remote panel with Dan Mitchell, Janie Vigil, Robin Ball, and Julie Barrett.
Hello?
Hello, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Hello. My name is Anne Marie Parsons. My daughter Carrie Parsons was killed in the mass shooting that occurred in Las Vegas, Nevada on October 1st, 2017. 58 people died that night. The number ultimately went up to 61. More than 850 people were also injured. 10 minutes was all it took to accomplish that with an AR-15 assault weapon. With this weapon, you don't need to be a good marksman to kill and or injure over 900 people. No one was targeted that night. They were all mowed down.
Okay. A lot of the injuries they're talking about right there weren't injuries from the actual shooting. They were injuries from people trying to get out of the area. Sprained ankles, twisted knees, scrapes, abrasions. They had all those up to pump the numbers up. Now, the dude who did the shooting in Las Vegas was a complete piece of shit. No lie. How come we haven't heard any real information on that in a very long time, considering they should have still been investigating it? That whole shooting is questionable, to say the least. A shooter in that situation, with distance, with angle, could have killed more people with bolt action rifles firing accurately than some dumbass just spraying and praying. So don't think for a second that they wouldn't turn around and be after these high-powered sniper rifles if you give them half the chance, which in our world is your average deer rifle.
Down. None of them stood a chance. Our family has to live forever with the knowledge that our daughter was killed, shot in the back while she was running for her life.
That doesn't make you an expert on firearms,
I
lady.
understand
I'm
the
sorry.
concerns of some about Second Amendment issues, but I believe everyone in this room knows exactly what our U.S. Constitution and our amendments say about assault weapons. Nothing. And
Yeah,
that
it
is
says
because our
arms.
founding fathers had no way of knowing what kind of weapons.
Okay, again, let me take issue with my girl here. One, you're not a firearms expert because someone in your family got shot. I'm very sorry for your loss. Our founders saw war up close with exploding mortar shells and cannons and multi-barreled firearms called volley guns. They knew exactly what firearms would do to the human body. Our founders would have loved to have had AR-15s. Our founders also knew that every government at some point in time becomes tyrannical. That's the reason they wrote the Second Amendment in there. They wanted the people as well armed as the government. So as much as I am sorry for your loss, lady, speaking out of pain and emotion doesn't make you an expert on jack shit.
Mankind would eventually create, or what humans would ultimately start to do to each other with these weapons. Abraham Lincoln once said, and I quote, the dogmas of the past are inadequate to the stormy present. This occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. Please make the right decision here. Ban the sale of assault weapons in Washington state, as 9 other states have already done. Please pass Bill 1240. Do it for your families. do it for Carrie.
Thank you. Mr. Shuntra, please. I'm sorry, we're short a mic or a chair. Apologies.
Hi there. My name is Robert Shentrup, and I live in Seattle. I come before you today as a survivor of gun violence. On February 14th, 2018, my two younger sisters went to school at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Only one of my sisters made it back home alive.
Still doesn't
My
make you
sister
an
Carmen
expert on the
Shentrup, who was
Constitution of
16 at the
firearms,
time,
buddy.
was murdered, along with 16 of her fellow peers, teachers, and staff, with an assault weapon. It is for this reason that I am in support of this bill to prevent violence in our state by prohibiting assault weapons. Assault weapons are designed to kill people quickly and efficiently with military-style features far beyond standard sporting firearms. Because of these extraordinarily deadly effects, assault weapons are frequently used.
Okay. The first actual challenge to the first real gun law, federal gun law in the United States, was the challenge to the 1934 NFA. In there, the justices came up with the opinion that a short-barreled shotgun would not be useful in military service, so it was not protected by the Second Amendment, meaning firearms useful in military service would be the ones that are protected under the Second Amendment. If the dude had been caught with an MG42 with a full belt locked into it, according to their decision, it would have been protected by the Second Amendment. So all this talk about military features and all this crap, I promise you, there are a lot of us out there who have more money in our firearms than your standard issue M16 or M4. Better barrels, better triggers, better sights, you name it. These features, where they can be used to kill people, they can also be used in defense. Our founders did not say that, hey, this amendment only protects weapons that aren't useful for military service. They wanted to ensure that the people could defend themselves against the government. That's the reason they wrote the Second Amendment. And just because some jackass goes out there and actually kills a bunch of innocent people with a firearm doesn't make that firearm any more or less useful for self-defense.
To carry out the senseless violence that plagues our communities. As I know all too well, assault rifles are the weapon of choice for mass shooters. All 6 of the
Most
deadliest
mass shootings
in the
happen
US
with
in the last
handguns.
decade, of which Parkland is included, have involved assault weapons. In our own state, assault weapons have powered devastating mass shootings in Mukilteo and Burlington. Too often, people assume these shootings will not happen. It will happen in other communities, but not theirs. I thought the same, and I was wrong.
'Tis
We
why a
cannot
lot of
afford
us
to
carry
keep
guns.
waiting for the next deadly mass shooting to happen and maybe happen here. Please support this bill to keep military-style assault weapons out of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from either Barbara Serrano or Kristen Beneski. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, Chamber, I'm like you, man. I don't understand. I don't understand the mentality.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and members of the committee. My name is Barbara Serrano, the Governor's Senior Policy Advisor on Public Safety. We've been here several times before, so I will keep my statement brief.
Yeah,
The
you could
military
just
style
shut
assault
up.
rifle is designed for the sole purpose of maximizing the number of people killed. Assault weapons
it's
are 11
not.
times more likely to be used in a mass shooting, and they are 7 times more likely to
ADX,
kill
what's
a law
up, brother?
enforcement officer than any other firearm. Sadly, the images of grieving parents and family members are ingrained in all of us. As Representative Peterson noted, the list of names of victims is long and it's unnecessary. Let's stop the carnage. Let's ban assault weapons. Thank you.
Okay, here's one for you. If you're worried about long lists of people dying, we could get into heart disease. We could get into cancer. We could get into fentanyl deaths, which kill way more people than assault weapons. And here's an interesting question. So if you have someone who is going out, whether it's a gang member, serial killer, and they kill a number of people over a large amount of time, are those deaths worth less than others because other deaths happen in a very short amount of time? Is this just a timing thing? Doesn't matter that dude killed, 47 people, or hell, the Green River Killer. He was active while I was in Washington State. Doesn't matter he killed more people than fucking cancer because he did it over a long period of time. Is that really the argument that we're looking at here?
Thank you. 40 seconds. Please.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kristen Beneski, First Assistant Attorney General, and I'm here on behalf of the Attorney General's office to speak in strong support of HB 1240, which would ban the sale of assault weapons in Washington. After a tragic shooting in Mukilteo in 2016 and a promise to parents, Attorney General Ferguson has proposed this bill every session since. And meanwhile, the mass shootings haven't stopped.
In other words,
In fact,
they just
these
keep
horrible
proposing
incidents
it,
have become
proposing it,
commonplace.
proposing it
As
until
has
they
been
get
noted
enough
several
control to
times
pass.
already, from Sandy Hook to Uvalde, Las Vegas to Buffalo, the list is too long and the victims are too many. This is the 7th session in which Attorney General Ferguson has requested this bill because exponentially deadly military-style weapons don't belong on the streets. Over the past decade, assault weapons were used in more than twice as many mass shootings compared to the previous 50 years. They can fire many rounds at a rapid rate, killing and injuring more people more quickly than other types of firearms.
No,
and many of the
they
weapons
can't.
used in the horrific mass shootings we all know were bought legally. That includes both Uvalde and Buffalo.
Can
last
you
year.
imagine the damage
Assault weapons are
someone
also
could
7
do with an
times more
M1
likely to
Garand
kill
shooting
law
30
enforcement than
6?
any other firearm, as was just mentioned. It's time to stop making these weapons readily available. Banning their sale will not make anyone less able to defend themselves, nor will it make criminals out of law-abiding citizens.
Yes,
but
it will.
reduce access to the deadliest weapons used over and over again in the mass shootings that now plague our country.
Okay, we have an ATF ruling right now, pistol braces, millions of them legally owned. If this ruling stands, it will make millions of people felons overnight. People who are not a threat to anybody else, period. They are not a threat to society whatsoever. They just own an object that the government arbitrarily decided, we're changing our mind, fuck you. We're going to make this illegal now. That's what this is. I guarantee you there are millions of people in Washington State that have AR styles, AK style rifles, Dracos. God, there's so many different guns. I can't even think of them off the top of my damn head. I guarantee you those people have those guns. So yes, lady, when you pass this law, you are going to make these people felons for no other reason that you just don't like what they own. And you're too fucking stupid to realize that the vast majority of firearms deaths are suicides. And how are you going to dig them up and ask them whether they would have committed suicide with another object? You can't. They could have just as easily locked themselves in a garage and turned the damn car on. We live in a republic, meaning my rights are absolute. And you can't take those rights. Are you going to ban Ryder trucks when dude drove a Ryder truck up to a federal building and blew it up full of damn ammonium nitrate and diesel fuel? Can you ban evil? Hey, you're an evil person. You're banned. No. I find it very hard to fit this mentality into my head that, oh my God, the government needs to do more to protect me when there's not a single thing that the government touches that they make better.
Multiple states have adopted similar legislation banning these weapons or their sale. Multiple federal courts have upheld those laws, and the Supreme Court has allowed those decisions to stand. And just last year in the Bruin decision, the Supreme Court reiterated its previous holdings that the Second Amendment is not unlimited and that the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever. The time to ban assault weapons in Washington is now. Thank you for the opportunity to address this important issue.
Thank you. I think you've anticipated the ranking member's question, so he will have a question for you.
At least part of it, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So you referenced Bruin again, and in Bruin, the U.S. Supreme Court clearly said that this two-part public policy balancing test is not constitutional and rejected the two-part balancing test as literally one step too many, one part too many. It seems this policy is based on that two-part balancing test, and according to Bruin, would fail. How do you square that part of the Bruin decision with the ambition of this policy?
Thank you for the question. And as I just mentioned, the Supreme Court has reiterated that the Second Amendment right, which protects the right to self-defense, does not protect the right to use any weapon whatsoever for that purpose. The regulation of weapons of war is very much consistent with this nation's history and tradition of firearms regulation, and our office strongly believes that this bill is fully consistent with the Second Amendment.
And the ranking member has a follow-up.
And you kind of dodged the question a little bit there. Yes, the historic tradition of this nation in regulating firearms.
Okay. One, this country really doesn't have a huge historic history for regulating firearms. The regulation of firearms is something in our country's history that is very new. Two, when you tell me, well, the courts have upheld this, the courts in the All right, I think I'm back. Good God, this is killing me. Hey, so I almost forgot the freaking rant I was fixing to go on. I'm so ill with this damn internet shit. Completely throwing off my bitching session here.
Court specifically rejected in Bruin. So to my point, how does this proposal survive the Bruin standard there?
Well, as I said, the Bruin standard, part of that standard is examining whether the law is consistent with the nation's history and tradition of regulating firearms. There is a robust history and tradition of regulating firearms to protect.
No, there is not a rich history and robust history of this country regulating firearms. There's simply not. And there were small jurisdictions and states who did this shit in the 1800s and stuff, but they didn't have civil rights attorneys running around trying to tell people that, hey, no, that's against your civil rights. And let me explain something to you, you mindless moron. The courts have upheld slavery and segregation. The courts actually upheld a decision and made a slave go back to his master in the past. So don't give me this shit that it's right just because the courts upheld it. The courts upholding slavery was horse shit then, it'd be horse shit now. The courts upholding gun control now is horse shit, and it always has been.
Public safety, and this bill is consistent with that tradition. Just as an example, the Supreme Court has expressly said fully automatic weapons like M16s are not protected by the Second Amendment, and we believe that this bill is consistent with that line of precedent.
Great, thank you. Okay, you are excused. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your testimony. Let's
Now, M16's not protected. My ass. Again, the original challenge to the 1934 NFA, which you have to understand was a tax bill. Now, even though it was a tax bill, it had criminal penalties for not paying the taxes, but it was a tax bill. That's why a lot of these bills talk about the Interstate Commerce Clause. But the original challenge, again, to the 34 NFA said that this shotgun was not useful in military service. That is the reason they upheld the decision. So if he had had a full automatic weapon, by their own logic, they would have held it because a full automatic weapon is most useful in military service. I know a lot of people don't spend the time to sit in here and actually read and look at this shit because hell, we're busy with our lives. We've got families. We've got shit we've got to do. But goddamn, I wish a lot of gun owners would wake up.
Let's move to the remote panel, and we will begin with Dan Mitchell. Whenever you're ready, you may unmute yourself and proceed.
Good morning, Chair Hansen. My name's Dan Mitchell. I'm a firearms dealer from Vancouver, Washington. History is informed by text and tradition, a phrase you will come to know very well. No doubt you've been told this bill will pass constitutional muster, that the Bruin decision doesn't apply here. As demonstrated by the tectonic movement of appeal court documents, nearly all of the pending gun restriction appeals have been granted, vacated, and remanded back to the lower courts to be reviewed using the single-step non-Beans balancing test prescribed under Bruin. In the Ninth Circuit, Miller v. Bonta was declared unconstitutional, appealed, GVR'd, and sent back to the judge who declared it unconstitutional originally. More closely, the state spiked the football on the 1639 challenge after winning in the Tacoma District Court. We appealed and a full trial was to commence this February. The state, winners at the district level, just asked the Ninth for this case to be GVR'd back to the lower court. They asked to delay the game because they know our challenge is supported by the single step analysis in the Interstate Commerce Clause. They bought more time, but they haven't mentioned that. The days of using gun control as a fundraising tool are rapidly ending. Many here today will get press coverage and
Dan, you're right.
moral superiority.
Miller died before that case went in front of the Supreme Court.
Text and tradition are on our side.
And
the highest courts in the land are on our side.
Reading through that, it
Legal
was not
standards and
defended
not
very well.
emotions. When the glow of the reporter's lights dim, we will prevail. Passing this legislation will only guarantee steep legal bills for the state and abjectly fails to address the criminal element absent from this debate. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. Where constitutional rights are concerned, there can be no law or no rulemaking which would abrogate them. Miranda versus the State of Arizona, 1966, United States Supreme Court. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's hear from Janie Vigil, please.
Like I said, people put so much
Yes, good
thing on the
morning. My
courts,
name
but
is
the
Janie
courts have
Vigil,
upheld
and I'm a lifetime resident of
evil in the
Washington
past.
State, and I'm also the Vice President of Human Resources for Aero Precision. I'm here to offer you a different perspective today on this
I'm
bill.
gonna get you dressed. in
Aero
a minute.
Precision
Somebody
is
do.
the largest private employer in Lakewood, Washington. We are a high-tech advanced manufacturing company, and we manufacture firearms.
Hi.
Aero Precision is a
Say,
very
"Hey, Perks."
responsible employer and a good steward
Hey,
to the
say,
community.
hey, Perks.
This bill prohibits manufacturing and will result in a direct layoff and plant closure of our facility in Lakewood, Washington.
You're cute. Come on.
While I am speaking against this bill, more importantly, I am speaking up and standing up for our 624 employees, including our 58 veteran employees and our 380 minority employees, of which over 200 are non-English speaking. I am especially concerned about their ability to regain employment if this bill is passed. We treat our employees very well. We provide them with a very safe place to work, good wages, and free health care.
Yeah, dude, I've looked at Aero stuff, man, but
they
ain't cheap.
I'm handing the baton to you. The fate of these 624 employees are in your hands now. And I'm asking for you to stand up for our employees.
I do have
and their
this
families
from
and
Ballistic
vote
Advantage.
No on this bill. Thank
It
you
will
so
go
much for
on
your
my
time.
pistol
Let's hear
build
from
that I'm
Robin
fixing
Ball,
to do.
please.
9mm DPMS receiver. I think it's DPMS. I don't
Good
have to
morning. Chair Hanson, thanks for having me. My name is Robin Ball, and I am, after 27 years as a firearms instructor, shooting sports retailer, mom, and grandma, I have firsthand experience and the education that prompts me to disagree with House Bill 1240. The House Bill 1240 does not address the real problem of misuse of firearms. All this does is it gives a good headline, some publicity for those who support it, and allows you to move to other issues.
And going to
Believing
get a
you've
lot
done
of people
something to
killed.
make society safer. If making society safe is the goal, then let's talk about how gun violations are pled to lower charges.
Yeah, they are.
or
You're
mostly
100% right. He
dropped
did.
in our state courts. Let's talk about eliminating any possibility of reducing gun charges. Lock in tougher sentencing guidelines. Richmond, Virginia did a 10-year study called Hard Time for Armed Crime, and it worked. If you steal a candy bar with a gun, you should be charged with using a gun in a crime. It doesn't matter what the other ancillary crime is. Nobody wants criminals charged with gun crimes more than those of us who are law-abiding gun owners. Let's stop being so soft on crime. It's important for you to
dude, I've
review
heard
a
a lot of
statement
good
in this
stuff about
bill
Aero. Maybe
regarding
one of these days I'll
the
have the free
impact
cash to,
of the
to work with.
Clinton gun ban also. The actual findings from the CDC, and I quote, the 10-year gun ban had no measurable impact on gun violence. I can't figure out why passing this bill, which punishes people who are not breaking the law and committing crimes, makes sense. Your goal should be to protect our rights. And looking at why, as stated on Everytown's website, most shooters were known to law enforcement. Let's give law enforcement more
These
support
guys
to
that go
deal
out
with
and try to
potential
commit
danger
mass shootings
before
don't
they
want
happen,
two-way
not punish
ranges.
people like me, my
They
family,
want
and so many of my
unarmed
friends who
victims.
shoot for fun and occasionally buy new equipment for the support that they enjoy. This bill will have no impact on gun violence, and I urge you to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Julie Barrett, please.
Okay, guys, I had to switch over to the phone. But anyway, apparently my internet went down nicely this time. So I'm going to go ahead and end this one here. I get my son ready to roll. I got to pick up. I got to head into town for a little while. I may pick this one back up in a little bit. Just depends on what all I got running. Might work on some stuff on the live stream later. So anyway, I'm going to end it here. You perps all be cool. And we'll catch you on the next one. Be cool. Keep that thing on you as always. And I'm out.